Hey folks, welcome back to the cabin build. I'm Tim, this is the restoration couple. Together with Joe and the girls, we are building our cabin here on the farm. Today is an interesting video. We're going to be trying out a few different router bits to zip these windows out in a matter of seconds. Stick around and I'll show you how we do it. Now, as you can see, we've made a start on sheathing all of the walls with OSB. We've done it internally, that's because of the insulation method we're using, but it looks like we've got very few windows here, but that is not the case. So let me explain what we're going to do. Now you can see behind me, we've already got one opening partially exposed here, but what we've done where possible is to sheet over all the regular size openings. There's a few reasons for that. One is speed, it's just much more efficient. Two, if you're working alone, holding up a board and then marking out the opening on the back of the board with clamps in place, or measuring everything and trying to snap a chalk line, it's very time consuming and not particularly easy. If you can board straight over the openings, it's obviously easier, especially if you've already laid out your centers, your studs evenly, so that everything falls on the center of the timber. We can sheet the whole thing and then come back in and sort the windows out afterwards. And we've got on here, that's the sill marked on that. Yeah? So you know the bottom corner is about, I don't know, 50 mil in from here. Yeah. If we start bottom right, go along, up, across, as you come down, as you cut the last bit, it'll be falling away, so it's not going to pinch the bit. Does that make sense? See where I've missed the sill here? So as we came round along with the bit, we would have snagged on this, and then we would have humped over and gone through the nail or whatever, so I'll bang that one out. Now Joe did make a start on a couple of the windows and we kind of showed how it works in the last video. However, the basics behind it are we're going to use a router to open up the windows afterwards. Remember, we've got our framing behind the OSB, so whether your OSB is on the inside or the outside, it doesn't matter, this would work. We've got a bit here which is a flush cut, flush trim bit, and it's got a bearing on it. So basically that bearing will ride on the timber the other side of the board, and then as you cut, it will follow whatever you've got there. So that's why I said if you haven't got quite a perfect square opening, this will just follow whatever you've got there. It's not going to correct anything. Now, this is a standard trend twin fluted flush cut bit. It did okay. It's quite wide, and we did get a bit of burning, or it was just slow in general. And dusty, because you're taking away quite a lot of material. In the last minute attempt on Amazon last night, I bought a couple of offerings which were on Prime, so they were next day. That's just me being impatient. If I planned ahead, then I would have got a more purpose bit sent through the post from Bosch or whoever. Now, we've got two to try. We've obviously tried this one out. It did fine, but we had to go slow and it made quite a bit of mess. I bought a set of random brand flush trim bits again. However, these ones are much thinner diameter, so we will be taking less material, there'll be less resistance, and hopefully this router will manage just fine. In addition to that, I did a bit of research, and the suggested tip for this type of thing is doesn't have a bearing. So instead of having a bearing which spins, we've just literally got a bladeless round bit of the profile. So that does the same thing, that's just going to ride along. But you'll notice this also has a point on the end, so it's a pilot in itself, you don't have to pre-drill. And it's only got one flute. I'm not quite certain the thinking behind that, but again, a lot of people swear by a single flute for this sort of thing. Unfortunately, I could only find it in 1/2 inch, so I'm going to have to use the large router. First impressions, this looks about as sharp as a spoon I used for my cereal this morning, but you know, I'm not going to knock it yet. Now, just so we've got a side-by-side comparison, this is a 12mm trend bit. It's an old bit, but it's fine. So we'll do part of the window with that. We will then use the thinner diameter, which is 1/4 of an inch, which is 6mm, on the same router, and then we'll jump in and use this specialist bit on the bigger one. Don't actually need to cut all these windows out now, thinking about it, because we can go ahead and insulate the outside. We can then put our membrane on, and actually that wouldn't have been a bad idea, because it would mean that we'd have a membrane stapled to the outside of the studs, and when we used our router, all the dust would be contained in that opening. We could just vacuum it out afterwards, but I'm conscious that we've got a big wall like a giant sail, so a few openings might help with the wind. We'll treat ourselves to half an hour without the tool belt on. It's a bit hot and sticky today. Whew. So for the first two bits we need a pilot. So you might have heard it bogs down a little bit with that bit, and as we came up here there just happened to be a knot, or just a little notch out of the wood behind, so of course our bit followed it. Doesn't really matter with rough framing like this. Anyway, that wasn't too bad, and it seemed pretty slow and steady. 600 watt router. I don't think we can complain too much. I do use this for most of my routing work now, because the other one just lives in the table. Right, we're unplugged. I'm not going to test it, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be a very hot bit. Yep. So it's literally half the diameter, this one, but this one still is a twin flute. And then the last thing we need to do is just reset this one to make sure that, because this is quite a deep blade, you can see probably about 30mm. We only need probably about 12. Hopefully that was fairly clear to see. That, albeit completely unbranded cheap as chips bit, was just fine for this sort of thing. There was much less resistance on the cut, and didn't hear it bog down at all that time. It's a smaller bearing, so it's left quite an indent. Obviously it doesn't matter in this case. Here's that example where we just had a knot and it just jumped in there. Not critical of seeing this sort of thing. But nice and flush. You know, both bits did exactly the same in that respect. I guess if you were being really fussy, by using a smaller bit, this radius, I mean, it's not a bad thing, to be honest, to have a slightly curved corner, because when we use the tapes and the sill and stuff, it's not we don't really want any sharp bits, but you can see this radius here is slightly smaller and neater than the larger bit. Which just obviously that's just the nature of routers. They're always going to leave a round corner. Now, if it wasn't for the sake of the video, I'd be perfectly happy with that, and I'd just be banging through now and getting them all cut out. But I did promise you that we could have a look at this other bit, so let's get it in the bigger router. Right, the window we'll do now is just a small bathroom window. I've designed it in such a way that it's the same width as our stud opening, so we haven't actually got anything structural changed here. I can see the bottom sill. We'll just go up until we hit. You'll have to excuse the comedy size base plate on the router. This one we don't need to pre-drill, so we're just going to aim just above where we've gone in and hope we hit a hole. Alright, officially I changed my mind. That's way better. And that's just the power, I guess. I think the happy medium is to get this bit, but with a 1/4 inch shank. And maybe even cordless. That'd be even better. But that was rapid. And judging, well, I'll have to watch it back, but not too much dust either. It leaves a burn mark because it's not a bearing. And because of that, I can see it's gone quite black on the end there. So that's not going to help as far as keeping it sharp. But to be honest, you don't really need it sharp. It's OSB. We could easily get every opening done, all 10, 12 openings in this done, I reckon, with that. Actually, the blackening is not on the blade. It's not on the actual cutter. It's just on that end where it's just riding rapid speed against the inside wood, which I guess is just causing a huge amount of heat. I'll have a quick whiz round on a bigger window with this, just for a proper test. Get cordless 1/2 inch routers, I bet you can nowadays. So we haven't got masses to do, it's just across to this stud and down. It's super satisfying. I feel like a human CNC. Alright, let's do that one and that one. Yeah. But it doesn't get much easier than that, does it? Awesome. We've got nearly all of our windows done. Now it's going to help because when we get the roof on, the trusses on, and the insulation, we're going to be pretty dark in here. When the membrane goes over, we're going to membrane straight over our openings on the outside. We'll then, when we're ready to fit the windows, cut them and kind of tape them all up ready. I'm hoping that the membrane, which is a breather membrane from Procter, which is who makes Roof Shield, is blue on the outside, and judging by when we used that green membrane on the roof last year, it does let through the light. It will just be a little bit blue in here, I think. We're nearing the end of the review on these router bits, and well, the little Plunge pilot bit failed after about 10. It's sheared off just from the heat, I guess, so we're back to this one. Still prefer this one though, so if we could find a better quality version of this, that might be the answer. There we go, just sheared off. Bit of a shame, but here you can see where this bit has been coming along. Because it's got no bearing, you can see the heat that's generated. It's kind of given that burn mark on there. And then when we had to switch to the bearing, nothing. So I think the heat's to blame. And I guess the problem is you can't get a bearing version of this because it wouldn't be able to plunge through. I hope that was an interesting insight. We've done it before. We did it on the porch, the oak porch at the last house, when I did that ceiling roof light. Also when we did the camper van as well. The camper van conversion, I did the roof openings and the side windows in exactly the same way. And once I panelled over with plywood, I could then just zip around afterwards. Another thing, which I probably don't think I mentioned earlier, is the structural benefit. If you are cutting and patching lots of different pieces of your sheathing board, you're actually not doing what it's there to, you know, it's there to prevent racking. So the larger the sheet, with, you know, lots of fixings, that's what's giving it the strength. If you start putting a little piece below a window, a little piece above, little sections here and there, you're not really doing what it's meant to be doing. So the idea of getting it across it in full-size sheets where possible and then taking out the openings after is probably the best way as far as structural strength goes. Plus, come on, it's way more fun than messing around with pencils and tape measures. Right, I better get back on with the less exciting stuff down the other end and get that end wall built. Hope you enjoyed that little insight. It's a shorter video today, but I thought as a standalone sort of tips video, it was quite a handy one to do. If you want to follow throughout the whole of this series, building this cabin and getting through lots of projects on the farm, then make sure you're subscribed. You can turn the notifications on as well, and then you won't miss anything. And of course, you can check out more progress over on Instagram. Thank you for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.